All right. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Welcome to today's Decisions Lunch and Learn. My name is Morgan Russell. My pronouns are they, them, and I've been with Decisions for, I think it's a year and 8 months now, approximately around that time slot. And I'm on the solutions engineering team, and looking forward to answering any questions y'all may have today. And if we can't get it answered in this call, make a support ticket or handle it in whatever means needed for that particular issue. Just like always, feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you so you can verbalize your question, or feel free to type it out in the chat and we'll get it answered that way. Because we do not have any pre-submitted questions at this point. So we'll go from here live with our questions that y'all may have. And if not, got a little bit that I can walk us through to show something for us. So as we trickle in, if you type in out your question, I just want to, let me close out of my PowerPoint real quick and slide over. Point out to everybody that we do have these beautiful lunch and learns recorded, and they're at the decisions-support YouTube. So they're just by date. So if you asked a question and maybe you wanted to go back and see, okay, what was the answer to that? Maybe I didn't write it down, or what are some of the other questions that have already been asked on a lunch and learn? Potentially go through these. Maybe down the road we'll sort them a little bit, but right now they're just by date, so you can go through and see it. If the date's a Monday, Tuesday, there's like a 90% chance that Will hosted it. So if you're looking for Will content, you can find some there. And I see a few more people trickled in. Howdy, it's Morgan. Feel free to submit a question. Oh, we got one from Jeffrey. There we go. So let me slide over to my environment. Go to my local. Do I have an SDK example? Or is there documentation that shows you how to create a step that allows you to pick a type in the process, assuming it corresponds to a generic compiled code, looking for a custom step that uses LANQ to perform a function listed. This would replace a flow that has been nested in for each, comparing to an existing list. It's performing badly. Also, let me know if there is an existing step to do this. Okay, so what you're doing is splitting a list, taking the original list, the property name, filtering the values of this. Okay, yeah. I know of a step to do this if it's what I think. So correct me if I'm understanding you wrong. But it sounds like you're taking a list of objects and you want to get like the matches and non-matches from it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. We have a beautiful step. It needs to be highlighted more. It's probably one of my favorite steps. So I'll show you the, there's two kinds. It's the, just forgot what it's called now. It's the rule. There's flows. I'll find it, one sec. Sample flow for us. I thought of it initially. Oh yeah. Filter, that's what it's called, filter. So it's a rule filter collection. So let me see if I can pull it up from filter and find our actual word for it. Yeah, rule collection filter step. And there's also a flow collection filter step. So both of them kind of function in a similar way. One just allows you to do it with a flow. And one lets you do it with a rule.
The flow one is just called collection filter step.
Ah, sneaky. There we go. And there's a sort as well if you just want order. But I find myself mostly using this rule collection one because a lot of the times I'm just trying to filter on something that maybe the fetch entities didn't let me filter on and such. So what we can do here is I'll first do a quick fetch of accounts, or I'll just get all accounts real quick. But whatever collection you pass in, this step will update to match that type, and that'll be your input collection. And then you can select whether or not you'd like returning matches and non-matches to say this failed, this returned false on the rule or true on the rule, or both sets, depending on how you set up your logic there. And when you do both, you get two outputs that you can name however you see fit in your data and your flow. So if that's what you're trying to accomplish there, I would definitely suggest this step. One
Yeah,
of these
thanks,
two.
Morgan. I actually I have this set up already. What I was going to do is
Okay.
I was going to do a comparison performance test
Oh, okay, with the SDK.
with the SDK. But do you happen to know what this does under the hood?
Off the bat, I do not. It might be exactly what your function described. I don't know if we have anybody from dev team on here on core dev that would be able to provide that answer for you. So it might still be a good idea if you're checking and trying to trim on performance to check. So I can duplicate our tab on our documentation to see. I know we have definitely some good SDK documents here for us. I'm not sure if it'll answer specifically your follow-up question there on it, on how to create a custom set. I believe it should though. But yeah, this documentation kind of walks you through. It's got the so you'd have to have the module with it, and then this is the login page.
Yeah,
Sorry,
we've actually got an SDK DLL that we use with decisions. I just couldn't find any information on how you would create a step that does like a deserialization step where you pick the type. So I would want to use this, or similar to the collection filter step where you can pick any type and the step the step changes to match the type that you're processing, basically.
That might be under these. I'm not too familiar. I haven't worked directly with the SDK myself. I'm not sure if anybody else on our call has decision sidewise, but if you haven't gone through what's provided here in the documentation, that would be my first place to suggest there to take a look to then do your comparison. But it's definitely a good thing to check. I think for the most part, we try to have our steps be pretty optimized as far as in place of that logic, so you wouldn't have to create a step, but it's definitely a good question to check.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. And while we're on the documentation, I do see we have another question, but quickly, I'd like to highlight we have our new feature down in the lower right-hand side, the suggest and edit. So if ever you're using the documentation, which is a fantastic resource, you can go down here. If you see something's wrong or something needs to be updated, maybe the particular article that you found, the only one on your topic, didn't answer entirely your question, you could suggest an edit, or if you have more context to add, you could select that button in the lower right, suggest edit. It would go to this form for you. And here you're using the email that's connected to your customer account on support. So on Tirade or, support.decisions.com. So the email that you would log in. So I've got a sample email here. You'd provide, what you say needs to be changed. If you see a spelling error, that would be a great thing to tell us as well if you have time. But if not, any kind of suggestion, needs a example with email or such, you could provide screenshots of like a project you did or other files that you think would be an example of that could help that document. So that's one way that y'all can have an impact on our documentation site, as well as help our shared knowledge as decisions developers across companies. So you would just, if you had a document, I'll do a quick sample here of some SQL and make sure I put test really large so the team knows that I am just testing here, and you'll submit it, and then you'll get a end form here that says thank you for submitting it, and they'll send you updates at the progress of that moving forward, as well as this, you have a doc number with it. And it ties it to whatever article you were looking at when you clicked that button. So since we were looking at this article here, that's why it's tied on the ticket we created. So I just quickly wanted to touch on that for us, because I think it was new maybe in 7.6, 7.77, or not. It's not with the decisions release, but around that time frame. Brain gets all stuck with those, but it's new and it's there for everybody on the documentation site. All right, let's take a look at David's question. Can you tell me the best way to process a large amount of data? I've looked at the documentation on run flows for lists and async flows, but when I try it out, memory usage goes through the roof and it stalls out. Yeah, that is definitely a difficult one. I'm not super familiar with bulk testing. That would be a really good question and something I could ping one of our solutions architects or the solutions architect team. So that's Ben and Josiah, which they're both probably busy at this immediate time.
Sure.
But I can definitely look into that and see if we have any further documentation for you that might not be that we have internally. That's not, since you already said you looked at our documentation site, and try to get back to you on that.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be good if you don't mind.
Yeah. So David Pitcher, I'll write that down and follow up with you on that.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no problems. Sorry, I couldn't answer that.
No worries.
You'll have really good questions. Absolutely good stuff. Let's see. And feel free to stop me if you got another question that comes up, or you got it all typed out now. Just let me know. I'm gonna just touch on something that was updated in version 7 to be renamed. So you might have used it in version 6 if you're working on it. It was previously called, I believe it was design integrations maybe, but it's now called design patterns, and you can create it right here on any kind of designer folder. Let me take a look if doc says exactly. Yeah, data designer and design pattern. So it was previously called something else in 6. If anybody on doc teams might know that specific name from before, but we do have this functionality in 6. It's a little bit cleaner now in 7, but it's really useful for any time in your process where you're potentially doing a runtime selection of something and you're passing through different things, but they all have to have that same input and output. So a design pattern allows you to, that's what it was, interface was the previous name, not integration. That makes more sense. So in 6, it was called an interface. In 7, it's referred to as design patterns. So like we just said, it's up here. You create design pattern, give it a name. I'll just give this one sample. Perfect typing. Yeah, I can definitely look at that real quick. Design pattern, I'll just draft up one quick. It's really nice because it's basically a platform where you'll set the inputs and outputs in something, and anything anything you make using this design pattern will be locked into having these inputs and outputs. So say we know we want to have a count as our input. We can just drag that in. There's also the list view that provides a little bit cleaner there, but you can move shapes around here if not. So you can have an account as the input. Actually, I like the diagram view. Diagram view gives you all the properties there. And if you know your output, say you're doing some kind of interview process, you're sending in employee information or an account and you want to see if they're qualified or not based off of that info, maybe you'd have a Boolean as your output. So then on your output, you would just name your Boolean, maybe qualified or something of the sort. So now everything that you create with this design pattern will be locked to have those inputs and outputs. So if a user comes in to edit them, they won't be, to edit that flow rule that is built using it, you won't be able to change it. So this allows kind of restrictions on saying, hey, you can edit this flow, but it has to work in this frame, or you can make a new flow or rule, but it has to fit this pattern so it works in my flow so I can use it. So it's a good way to kind of confine that, but still giving the freedom for a potential developer to go through and make it. So once you've built a design pattern in a designer folder, you'll now have the option to create something with that design pattern. And it'll give you every thing that you can apply it with, or you can create other, which is something that's going to be just without it. Same thing if you have in a different folder, just the create flow, it'll still allow you to apply that design pattern. So this is flow with design pattern. Badly named capitalization. But now you can see from here that the inputs and outputs are already set up for you. You don't have to do anything for it. The flow already's got it there. And the nice thing about it is that if you were to go back and change your design pattern, everything that is built and tied to that design patterns, inputs and outputs will also update. So it's definitely a nice way to do that if you see yourself with a lot of repeating data there. Okay.
Quick question about that one,
Yes.
Morgan. Sorry.
Mhm.
Is that kind of like the declared interface on?
Yes,
on
exactly.
steroids?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the name of that one.
I gotcha. Okay.
I was thinking the other I word, integrations, but yes, the interfaces is it's just the new name of it in 7 is being called design patterns. Absolutely.
Gotcha.
So we had your other question, David. If you put a tab container on a page and you have distinct reports on different tabs, can one be dependent on the other? Yes, you can still do parent-child reports on different tabs, I believe. I haven't tested it. I usually do side by side when I do a parent-child report, but I believe it still should function the same if you're using the selection bus. So we can build one out real quick. So I'll just create other, give us a form, because that's where you'll find your pages. So let's do a regular, a landing page sounds good. So a sample, we're just hitting capital A's all day, sample page. And we'll drag in our tab container. Oh, okay, get rid of the form tile. Form tiles are useful because it's kind of like a flow run part, but with the form. I think there's the flow run parts typically considered best practice there, but just a difference of preference there. Okay, so say we'll have tab A is going to be our parent report. So that'll be our accounts or email one. And we'll have some kind of related record on the second one. So this will be the child report. Might both be accounts, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So we have our tab containers set up. Real quick. I'm just going to read Jeffrey's question real quick to see if it's something I need to build something out for or not. Designing a flow. Is there a difference between creating a variable and then updating it on 2 different paths or creating a variable on those 2 paths? Yeah, we'll build that one out in just a second. So I'll get right to that, Jeffrey, afterwards. So I'm interested in this. David, had you tested this one out, or is it just something you were thinking about?
Tested it on just I guess different, what would you call that? Like containers on the same page. I haven't done it in a tab container mainly because I wasn't sure.
On this kind of pages is what you mean. So when you have a dashboard published and you have the pages up top.
Oh, no. Like, I mean, the tab container and like a form tab container, like what you were doing, like across those. Like, I guess I'm wondering, like, can the report communicate across tabs? And if so, how can I make
if it's
that
on
happen?
if it's on a page, I believe it should. So you can do the same function as the regular parent-child report. Like I said, I haven't tested it. That's why I would like to work that out for us. So
I gotcha.
But essentially, it should, based off of the selection bus, should still move between it. So we'll have a report viewer on both of them. We'll make a report here. We don't need the folder. I need my report though. So let's see if I already have a default. I want to see if I already have a just accounts report. Nope. So we'll make a default accounts report real quick. So parent. Grab our data source here. Should just be account. And we'll add some records. We'll do account ID. Let's see, we are in my local, so I only have a few accounts created here. You'll have to bear with me. and email. I recently swapped my database. So I only put some first name, last name in there, but we've got it there. Let's also add one of the default ones should always have the, is it machine type? User type. Yeah, so machine versus person. Okay, cool. So built your parent account, and now we want it to, whichever one you're selecting, filtering the second one. So let's say we're going to filter the second one by, we'll do it. The ID is probably the best way to do it. So we'll send the ID as the selection bus up. So we're selecting our ID field, and we're going to scroll down our properties and send data as field change source. That's the selection bus bit of it. And then whatever you name it here is what you want to name your filter on your child report. So let's just name this one. I try to stick it to 3 letters just to keep it so I can remember it. It's easy to go. Report ID. If you have like a certain type, so say your type was personal loan, maybe PLID, stuff like that. It'll work for other naming conventions as well, just as long as, like I said, it matches. So I tend to copy it. And once that's in there, we'll just hit save. And we'll just have it filter child report. But to give ourselves a break, I'm going to duplicate this tab real quick and make a copy of our parent flow and edit it to be our child account. So we'll be filtering. We pick the account on the first page and we want the second one to basically show the same, just the one account and have filtered it. So I'm going to right click using the lower edit and hit copy report. We'll make this account child. So it's our child report. So it's going to be receiving. So we're going to make sure we uncheck that send data is filtered because it's going to actually be receiving the filter here. And just to make it a little easier, I will remove account ID as a field to see. So we know we don't need to see that for us. So now you'll add the filter, whatever you're sending, you want to filter by in the second group. It's going to be affected by different based off your use case. But my example would be filtering based off of that ID. So we'll go to field filters. And since we're sent that ID, that's what we're going to be catching over here. So we're going to say account ID equals, or we could also do it the reverse. Say, if I selected this one on the first page, we want everything that's not that one. So maybe you do not equals or something along those lines. So what we'll do is just equals to have it match the same one. And then value here, I think we just leave that blank. We make it get values from other reports. So that's saying, hey, we're listening to a selection bus sent by another report. So we select that one. And now up here, the filter name is the part that we have to match and where I can go ahead and paste in what I named the selection bus on our parent report there for us. So this should be good. So it's showing no data here because it's not receiving anything. It's listening to this filter and saying, hey, nothing matches nothing because nothing's coming in. Depending on how you're designing your flow, you might want it to show everything unless you have something selected in the other thing. So that's where this checkbox would come into play. If you want to show all data, if the filter value is empty. So in this case, we're listing for an account ID. If we don't have one coming in, we'll just show everything. We won't filter it down. So that's an option that I think for us will show because we know that if it is filtered, it's just going to show us one result. So let me go ahead and close that for us. So now, oh, actually, I have it open in the other tab. We go back to our tab containers. Oh, I moved this one. Let me cut it. This needs to go to parent. And I got a report viewer here. Did it paste? No, I don't know where that went. Let's look in the Explorer. It's somewhere. So I'm going to delete it. Sometimes grids get sneaky. It must have dropped off the page. Ah, here we go. Clicking too fast for it. You can do it, decisions. So here's this one. So that's report 2. Oh, it all dropped on that same. Delete. Delete. Okay, so there's the one that we did add. And let me try to add one here as well. Nope. I've never had it fight me this much on. There we go. Got it. Eventually. So let's select our child report that we made. So counts child. Save that. Let's double check to see if I have any other settings. So we're not getting the report ID from selection bus because that would be dynamically showing what report you want to see here. We're just receiving something from selection bus. So don't have anything to do there. Start multi-select. Selection refresh. Think we're good on the rest of it, but we'll find out if not. So probably should have renamed our report viewers and such. So the titles come up real quick. I'll just name one child and one parent to keep us clear. And then we'll quickly publish this to a folder so we can test it out. But we should be able to preview it here. Oh, it's got that default action. The left click slide. Yeah, most likely your selection bus stuff will not work on preview. Preview, just like in forms, it's useful to get a rough idea of what you made will look like with some things, especially on your page. It'll show some data for your reports if it can fetch it. But it's not going to give you an entirely accurate result. So to publish that page, we go to click on whatever folder you'd like to publish on. We'll go manage, page dashboard, add page dashboard, parent, child, page. And we'll pick our page, pick existing since we just created that page. If we had a bunch of pages or we wanted to specify the order, you could do that there. Okay, so now we see that it got added up here to one of our tabs. Since I added it on a designer folder, you also have all the full tabs that allow you to, actually create flows. So let's see if this works. So I selected that one. You can turn off that default action of that left-hand slide. It's in grid view if you change grid settings to specified. And then this one to left click, you can change it to none if you don't want that thing that pops up on the side with actions. Excuse me, that's called the slider. So you can hit no actions if you don't want that to happen. So we'll go ahead and close out of that because I didn't like that. Okay, so now we can select it. Let's see. And it did filter there. So you can also check to see if your selection bus is working up in the top of your URL of your page or dashboard. So when you change the selection, you see up top the name of the property that we named our selection bus. So that report ID, that RID that we named, you can see that when you select a different row, it sends a different account ID through the system. And over here, that's being filtered. So let's say we're now click on this. It's got horribly squished, but let's click on my main account there. We can go to the second, and it's test user still. Maybe it's a lag there then. Let's see the email, but it is sending up in the top. There we go. Refresh it. No. Let's take a look. Guest account. Test user. That's definitely interesting because it is sending this properly, but doesn't seem to be filtering the second one properly. With 7, we can test stuff with global debuggers, so we can look at that. First, I want to real quickly try to make this report spaced out a little better. So grid view allows you to do a lot of that. Oh yeah, I like stretch mode. Enable grid stretch mode. It kind of auto spaces everything for you to say, hey, this is a rough amount of space that I think based off of the amount of fields you have. So it kind of fills it. So if you specify your grid to get those detailed settings, that's when I would suggest to turn on. Makes the look and feel a little nicer. Okay, so let's try again. I'm going to select this. We know it just updated up top. And we know that's the ID because we can see it here. So it is sending our correct ID through the selection bus. We come over here. Okay, so maybe it just needed to be refreshed. So it does work through that tab container there, David. So that should work for you.
If you try to update it one more, like if you
Refresh
change
it
your
here.
selection, if you change your selection again.
On the first page and go back.
Yeah.
Is that what happened to you then?
I mean, I haven't even gotten that far.
It looks like there's some kind of lag between it because it definitely is sending up top. You might have to spin this second wheel on your second tab to get it to, pull it in. But
I see.
that
Is
might
there a way I
require some more
can,
testing.
is there a way I can automatically
Spin that.
refresh that?
You can. I'm trying to think of the best way to do it because you can refresh components on your page with send folder change event is the step, and you specify the folder, and there's the setting you have to turn on to make sure it refreshes your report viewer on page folder change events. But once you set that up, that should be there. But I'm not sure the best way. I'm trying to think through on selection. Is there a particular reason you want it to be in that separate tab versus the first? It's like you make a pick here and then everything else is supposed to change.
Yeah, basically. Like if maybe I use oil and gas terminology a lot. We have these things called AFEs that are authority for expenditures. And I basically want a list of all of the ones that are out currently assigned. And then when they click that, I want it to go to a different report that has more detailed information about those other things. I mean, I get it. I could, do it on a separate container on that same
Yeah,
page. As far as like look and feel.
I see it for your design though.
Yeah.
What you could do potentially if depending on the functionality you need from a report, you could do this functionality, I think a little bit easier, just depending on if you want just the view of two sets of data, like the reports of two data, one filtering the next. In a flow run part on your page, you would still be able to use a tab container and then use an advanced data grid instead of an actual report here. Functions just like a report. And then do an active form flow to filter the second input to your second advanced data grid on your second tab. I think that wouldn't cause this kind of delay that we're seeing here. This is something that I will submit a DT for because it's set up correctly. So I'll look into seeing if we can get that maybe fixed up in the next push, because I think this version that I'm on is 7.71. Yeah, so we're fairly recent. So
we're still on 6. So I guess I'm curious as far as like terminology goes. I know the active form flow is like a 7 thing.
Yes.
What's the 6?
You would do a data flow.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah. So your data flow would essentially say, based off of what's selected, you'd have a single selection, your advanced data grid, based off what's selected, and the trigger would be, when something's the data grid change is selected. Based off what that is, run the data flow. Data flow then filters your second report and then updates the input name of that second advanced data grid.
Gotcha.
Yeah, sorry if that was long to go through.
That's totally fine.
Any follow-up questions on that before we go to Jeff?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, super cool. Sorry about that. That should have worked, but flow run parts are nice for sure. Okay, let's take a look. So Jeff, and you talked about we're looking at flows. So let me go back to our list view and go into that flow we started messing with a little bit. Okay, so when designing a flow, when designing a flow, is there any difference between creating a variable and then updating it on two different paths or creating the variable on both paths? I think it's more efficient generally to update it based off of what I'm seeing here just in the text. So you make it first and then update it on or creating on the two separate, depending on how many steps you're using, the least steps is going to be the most efficient. So maybe, yeah. So if it's going to be like the output of a form or the output of something where you could do change value. So if you did a create data step up front and say, you know, we're creating this initial data of employee score, and it's an int. So say you're creating this initial value up top just to have the name like in your flow data so that you can change value on it here. And then potentially you do some form, you do some rule or truth table that's going to output something. I could quickly make one, but whatever the output is, and depending on the pathing and all your other logic there, if you have it as an output that it changed, you could just use change value on that same data name. And that's what I would generally suggest there.
So on this was one someone on my team brought up. It is more of a question, not so much about the data, but the scoping. So you could, like, even without the form, if you just had like a string match step there or something that had a few outcomes, you can, you know, as a coder, I would expect you'd have to create the data before the string match. And then if you're going to update the value on each of the outcome paths of the string match, and then use it again downstream, you would have to declare it first, but you don't have to. You can just, on each of the string match paths, you could
create it separately.
Create it there. So I didn't know if there was any difference between that or side effects or decisions.
I think, yeah. It really depends on the exact like use case for it. I think it is nicer if there's the type is named and created once. And then you're able to update it. If it's something where you're updating the value on it, like you were describing, I think change value for it. But sometimes it's not something where you're changing the value. Like you need it created out then. It's fine to do that. So I think most of the time, like it's really situational because I've done both before where you go through a loop because, you know, when you do a for each loop and you build it, you know, add something to list. You can just create that list right in that step. That's add item to list since it loops back to itself without having a create data step up front. So it's a little bit situational there. But yeah, it really depends on kind of what steps you're looking at.
Yeah, either way works. But
for sure.
I just wasn't sure how it works or if there was any difference in the way that was quote compiled.
Yeah, if we look at it on the very simplest, like you're saying, so you have string match, so you have two paths coming here. So you have path 1 and path 2. And, you know, you're trying to decide whether or not you should create the data here first or have it created instance on both. And then, you know, just there instead of having it here and update here. If it's in that very simple state, then I would say just here, since it's less steps for decisions to go through and process. So that'll probably be quicker there for you. But if it's more elaborate than that on the grand scheme, there's no necessary best practice and so much logic. But simplistic this, I would say the two paths for the least amount of steps there.
Okay.
Yeah, really good question though. Because we definitely do that a lot as far as, you know, you create that variable and you want to change it and move it through. Awesome. Did you have any follow-up questions for that, Jeff, or is that good?
No.
Okay, super.
That was good. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. It's wild that it is already November. On Halloween Day, I went to a store and saw so many Christmas decorations already. And I was like, I can't believe it. But I think that's basically all I want to show today. Like we talked about earlier, that design pattern and what it previously was that interfaces is a really neat feature depending if you're using a lot of runtime selections or just designing flows with very similar structures and you might want to update them all at once, it's definitely something to look into as being very useful. And that, again, is available in 6 and 7, just under a different name, as well as we have the beautiful suggest and edit now capability for y'all to help us improve our documentation for you and make it the best it can be. So that's really all I had today. So if nobody has any other questions, we'll wrap up a little early on our Wednesday. Thanks so much, everybody, for attending. Great questions. And David, I will follow up on you about what we talked about because I wrote it down.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. I guess one maybe quick thing. I don't know if you can hit this or not, but
sure.
Maybe you can tell me the best step to use for this, because I've been searching through steps to try to figure out how to do what I want to do. So let's say I have a text file and I have rows in that text file that have identifiers at the beginning. It could be a 5, 10, 30, 40, 60 set, whatever. There's just identifiers, right? And let's say it repeats itself and I want to basically say everything between these two identifiers, right? So from a 5 to a 5, how do I, like, is there a step or something that I can, like, so I can basically index those to
you could
say,
do
grab
a few different things for it, depending on, like Decisions always has, there's tons of different ways to do that. Off the top, what I was thinking was our regex. Let me see if I can spell it right. Our regex step that you could do. So regex matches, and you kind of build the regex for it to go through that particular thing and kind of scope that one out. Or you could also do splitting a string. So if you would take that string that has that entire ID and split it at a certain character, depending if you know that character, so you know that 5 is always at the 6th position. So you could do a split string by character. See if I can split string by character position.
Yeah, that's what
might be a good way for it. Okay, yeah. Is that one? Is it consistent where the spot is or no?
Yeah, it's always in the first 2 positions. So that's what I'm using. I guess what the rub is I always have those other records in there, so I'm still splitting those, and then I need to pull those out, and then how to, like, it's almost like I need to try to figure out, like, in my head I think, well, I need to index the whole thing and then figure out where the first 5 is, where the second 5 is, and then pull everything in between that, if that makes any sense.
I feel like there's another one for it. First in list is another one I was thinking of. Split string, non-character split string. Something you just said made me think of another one. I know there's strip characters, and it'll look for particular characters to remove them. So what you could do is split it and then strip your characters. So like split it at that position where you know the first 5 is, remove the 1 potentially there. Regex max is true false, so that's not the one I was thinking of. Find first in list is similar to the rule collection filter that we were looking at, where you submit a collection of something and then edit a rule to say, I want to find this first thing. So it goes through that list and stops and spits out the first one. So that could be something where you split every character in that ID.
Yeah.
And get at that and try to find it matches that way, depending if that works better for your logic.
But there's nothing like to tell me, like, what position that particular line is at in that file. Like if I had a list of strings and I want to find the position in the list of everything that matches this guy, right?
That could be position in the list. You could get it by index. You could do a either a rule collection filter, depending on that logic again. You might have to say it back to me, or the flow collection filter that sends everything in that list and then cycles it through. Basically, if you haven't looked at the flow filter, we just did it earlier. Was it just filter collection? The step names are always a little fun. Yeah, filter collection step. This one, it'll let you edit that flow instead of a rule, and it has an include and exclude. So you could do a bunch of logic in here, potentially checking it and that int to send back out to include in it or not. Could be something there for
I see.
you.
Okay.
Mhm.
I guess my rub is I don't already have like a row number. Like all I have is the record identifier, right? So
Oh, so you don't have the rest of it, the rest of that text.
Yeah, so
like the
all I
row.
have would, let's say, like a 5, 10, 10, 10, 5, 10, 10, 10. So I don't have like a reference point, and I guess I'm looking for a step that may help me create it to where I can say, okay, this number 5 is at line 5 of the file, and the next 5 is at line 13 of the file. So I can basically get the difference and say, pull these lines by their position in the file to get everything in between, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Trying to think of, I haven't done much with text file merges. I know Decisions has a little bit more difficulty with Word, but text files, I feel like we should have a decent amount of things there. Compare to text items, create text file. So that creates a text file in Decisions, context provider, text from PDF. Maybe this index of text within text. Case insensitive. Again, I haven't used this, so I can't speak directly on whether or not this might work, but this will be a constant, whether or not you want it to be insensitive capitalization or not, what it contains, and then the source of it. And then you can get that index.
I see. That's okay. So that's one. Okay. So I guess I need to combine it all into one string. Yeah, I can't do it over a list of strings.
You could do a run flows for list and build that inner flow first and then send everything in, or use this step maybe inside a flow collection.
I see.
So in that flow there. But yeah, let me see if there's just a whole text section, because that might be in data to have more of it. Let's see actually where this folder is. Sometimes it can be hard to find steps. If you go and look at the where it actually is in the method of it, sometimes it'll give you help of where you can find it in the decisions drill down here. So usually data would have that text. And base 264, capitalize. So we've got a decent amount of things in here that'll help with text, formatting text. The length of a string potentially would help there with your situation with the index of text and text, what we just had. So yeah, there's some stuff here. And then, like I said, regex is something I would look into as well that might help with your particular situation there. Remove characters from start, remove spaces. Ah, here it is. This is the one I was thinking of earlier. Remove string after nth instance of it. So like you're removing 5 after you've seen 2 5s already, something like that would work with this step.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think I can. Okay. Yeah. I forgot to surf through the tree.
Sometimes it's hard to
for the steps.
Yeah. If you're not sure, like if you've already searched all your keywords that you can think of, that's definitely the next place I would go to look for it, is kind of scan through.
Yeah.
Because we have so many steps. So the search library might not be able to pull them all up because the processing power for it would be sad. So
gotcha.
That's how it works there a little bit.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I'm definitely excited to hopefully that there's some good steps that all mash together and fix that up for you. It's always a fun puzzle with decisions. So that's one of the reasons I like it. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much, David and Jeff, for your great questions. I'll follow back up with you, David, on your question about bulk testing or sending through that bulk data.
Thanks. Bye.
Yep. See you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Morgan.
Yeah, no problem.